So today we're going to begin discussing, we're talking about honoring a Talmid Chacham, honoring a Torah scholar, but sometimes it could come in conflict with honoring Hashem. If you give too much honor to a Torah scholar, it might detract, or people think that you're honoring them more than Hashem. So what do you do in that situation? So, Amar Abaye, Amar Yanai. So we have here, Rabbi's name is Rabbi Ivu. Yeah. He said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, a Torah scholar is not permitted, 21 on the bottom of 79. A Torah scholar is not permitted to stand up before his teacher except once in the morning and once in the evening. So only twice a day, so that the honor given a teacher does not exceed the honor given Hashem. So we don't want to be giving more honor to a Torah scholar more than to Hashem. So the words that the Gemara used was Shacharis va'arvis. What happened to Mincha? Because we daven 3 times a day, so why can we should be able to stand up for a Talmid Chacham at least 3 times?
That would be equal, then you have to be less than.
It has to be less than. It says you don't want that you should be giving more honor to the teacher, but if it's the same amount, it seems like it's not a problem. So let's look at footnote 1 on the next page. This is based on the opinion that only the prayers of Shachris and Mincha are obligatory, while the night prayers of Ma'ariv is optional. So that's why it only says twice a day. There's other opinions that explain the Gemara to be referring to the twice daily obligation of saying Shema. So it might not be referring to davening, but actually to Kriya Shema in the morning and by night. Okay, the Gemara emphasizes the importance of the mitzvah of standing before one's teacher. Rabbi Lazar said, any Torah scholar that does not stand before his teacher is called an evildoer, which we call a rasha. He will not live long, and he will forget his learning. So it's pretty harsh. As it is stated, an evildoer will not enjoy good, and like a shadow, he will not endure because he does not fear before Hashem. At first, I do not know what this fear refers. What is it talking about? He does not fear.
When it says, as it is stated, where
this is from Koheles, Ecclesiastes. But since it is stated elsewhere, before an old man you shall rise and you shall honor a zaken, you shall fear your God, I would say that this fear refers to the mitzvah of rising before a zaken. Thus, the first verse may be interpreted as follows. A rasha will not enjoy good. What is good? Torah is called toiv, which is called good. And like a shadow, he will not endure. That is, he will not live long because he does not fear before God. That is, he does not observe the command to stand before a sage concerning which is written, you shall fear your God. So here we see the opposite. What happens to someone who does not honor his teacher? Now here comes an interesting question. This is a very Gemara type of question. Is how do we view someone riding on an animal? Is he considered like he's walking, or he's just in a sitting position and the animal is carrying him? So is it that you're just stable, you're in one place and something else is moving you, or are you considered to be mobile, that you yourself are moving? The Gemara asks whether one must rise when he sees his teacher riding on an animal. So Abaye, they asked, is a person riding an animal regarded as if he is walking or not? Is he considered to be walking because the animal on which he sits is walking? Or do we look only at the person himself, in which case he is not walking, for he is sitting in one place? A practical application of this question is where a student sees his teacher riding on an animal. If a rider is considered to be walking, the student must rise before him, just as he would, upon seeing his teacher, walk. But if a rider is considered to be sitting, the student has no obligation to rise, since one does not have to stand when he sees his teacher sitting.
not, you're not standing up to honor his feet or his legs, you're standing up to honor his Torah knowledge.
So
And
what?
if he's passing in front of you, however he's passing in front of you, why wouldn't you stand?
But what if he's just sitting there
If you walk into a room
and
and a great Torah scholar is sitting, particularly if you happen to be walking past him, you would acknowledge him in some fashion, I should think.
Is this in public? He's in public, right?
yes, yeah,
Well, we're specifically talking about rising, right? To honor?
yes.
So you might nod your head and everything, but you wouldn't rise
No, so,
if you're passing by. Interesting question, if you're both on horses.
no, but what's common between the two situations is that a great Torah scholar is passing by you, passing in front of you.
So you're saying what difference does it make?
Yeah, walking, he's riding a scooter, he's, he's still a Torah scholar. Doesn't, who cares? He's walking or riding a scooter. He's still a Torah scholar. That's what we're acknowledging. We're not acknowledging the fact that he can walk on his own 2 feet. We're acknowledging the fact that he's a great Torah scholar.
So maybe you could word the question a little bit different. The question is, what makes the presence or space of a person? Which means who's coming into whose space? If someone is sitting there already and then you're passing by, it looks like from here that the halacha
We
would
went
not.
over that last week.
We said 4 amos and things like that, right?
We said if he's standing and you walk by, you needn't, but if you're standing and he walks by, you have to, if I'm not mistaken.
We mentioned that. I don't remember that.
And that's my point, that in both cases, you're standing still and he's passing by you. Whether he's walking or riding, what's the difference?
Right, but I'm saying, let's say he's already in the room and he's just sitting there, and you come into the room. You don't have to stand up. It's only if the teacher comes by you, then you have to stand up for him. But if he's already sitting in that room, you don't have to stand up for him. It's
Oh, so this isn't, I thought it said somewhere that he was walking.
It said that a person who's sitting on the horse is as if he's walking.
no, so that's the question. The person riding on the horse, is he sitting or is he standing or is he walking?
As opposed to standing still.
I
Yes.
suppose sitting, because standing hasn't entered the equation yet.
Oh.
Or
I
sit-
misunderstood it.
Or sitting still. That's
Did it mention sitting?
it.
I thought
It did say. It says
I'm sorry,
because
sitting
since
or walking, but standing wasn't mentioned.
standing was not mentioned.
I
So
can't find it now, but I'm sure we discussed a situation where you are standing and it was either a sage or a mace or somebody was walking, was passing by you. And the question was, maybe it was Tuma. It was Tuma.
So we're going to address Tuma right now. Here, maybe you looked ahead. It's possible.
No.
Okay.
I do, but I didn't.
Yeah. So let's see what it says here. The Gemara resolves the question. Abaye said, "Come here, the following proof from a brisa." So here we're going to bring a proof to our question from Tuma, because we know that if an impure person enters a certain area, so he contaminates that space. But the question is, what if he's standing or walking? Does it make a difference?
So I would have seen it in Parsha, in Tractate Brachos.
Possibly, if
Maybe
it,
that's
if it
what I saw.
mentions it there. So we have here a case.
Starting with Yosef.
Certain brachas, yes. So it says like this: if a mitzvah is sitting under the branches of a tree, it's a person who has tsaras, he said lashon hara, and now he's tamei, and someone who is a mitzvah makes the whole place. If he walks into the house, the whole house becomes impure.
Is there a source for that?
The Torah says my shavai that.
I mean the Talmud source. Is it given here for the first time, or is he quoting from a different part of Talmud?
So this is a brisa taught elsewhere. This is from Teras Kainim. This is from.
Study of Yosef. Okay.
It's also brought in a different Mishnah in Negoim, because they don't mention brachas here.
No, but
But
Brachos
possibly.
might have.
Brachos might mention it, yeah.
mentioned the same.
So we have here a Matzorah sitting under a tree, and a Tahor person is standing under the tree. The Tahor person becomes Tameh from the Matzorah, because now the Matzorah made it his place now, and now it's a place of Tumah. However, if a Matzorah is standing under the branch of a tree, and a Tahor person is sitting under the tree, the Tahor person remains Tahor. And because he's not, the impure person is not sitting, so he didn't make it his space. But if the Matzorah sits down, the Tahor person becomes Tameh. The reason for these laws is that a Matzorah spreads Tumah under a roof or under a tree only when he is sitting. So this is an interesting thing. The words that I think that the Torah uses is Maishava. Maishava means the place where he sits. So it's specifically if the Matzorah is sitting. The same rule applies in the case of someone carrying a stone contaminated with tsaras. That is, if the carrier of the stone is sitting, Tumah is conveyed from the stone to a Tahor person under the tree, because like the carrier, the stone is sitting. But if the carrier is standing, the stone does not convey Tumah, because it too is considered to be standing. So a person is holding the stone. Is the stone sitting or standing? We're saying here it depends on the person.
Carrier.
The carrier. So here we see that it's about the person carrying, not the thing that he's holding. And Rav Nachman Bar Kohen said about this brisa, this tells us that a person riding an animal is regarded as if he were walking. The brisa ruled that a contaminated stone does not convey tumah when its carrier is standing. Although the stone is sitting on the body of its carrier, it does not convey tumah because the carrier is standing. This proves that the determining factor is the carrier, not the stone itself, which is sitting. So
in the case of the rabbi, the horse is the carrier.
The horse is the carrier, and the horse is moving. So that's the determining factor. So therefore, it's considered as if the rabbi is moving also. So the halacha would require that you stand before a teacher riding on a horse. That would be the halacha, and we derive this from a halacha regarding tumah. So let's read it inside. Thus, in our case of a person riding an animal, the determining factor is the animal, not the rider. Hence, even though he is sitting, he is viewed as though he were walking, like the animal. The Gemara
That comes into conflict with the expression that an animal carries itself.
which would show that the person
Is independent of the animal. The animal is carrying itself, so it's responsible for whether it's walking or standing or whatever, and that means the actions of the person are separate. Then he could be seen as sitting.
it's a good question how that would the idea of chai noiseis atzmai. If you're saying if you apply that to the person is really carrying himself.
I'm saying if you apply it to the animal, now the animal is not a carrier, the animal is a self-contained being.
But then also the person, you could say the same thing.
Exactly.
So he is also carrying himself in a way. Yeah.
Chances are, if you see your teacher riding a horse, you're going to be standing
You're going to be standing. Oh,
already. You're on the outside, unless
Uh-huh.
you're looking at a procession or something.
You could be sitting on a bench.
That's what I'm saying. If you're sitting on a bench, then you're obligated
just to rise, to stand up. But you're saying if you're already outside, you're probably standing either way.
Wait, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you were on the horse, whether you had to stand in the stirrups. If you don't have stirrups, stirrups are fairly new invention.
Uh-huh. All right, so we'll have to look into Chai Noiseis Atzmai and how it relates to over here, because it's actually interesting, because the proof we brought was from a stone. A stone doesn't have its own opinion, right? It's being held by someone. But over here we're talking about a person. So why is your status based on the animal that's carrying you? And the Gemara's question has thus been answered. If one sees his teacher riding an animal, the teacher is considered to be walking, and so one must rise in his honor. So that's we resolved this question. Shema Mina. So a lot of times the Gemara has to go back and forth
I
here.
would say not to my satisfaction, but okay.
Pretty simple.
I'd love to hear him address an animal carries itself. But
Yes, so the Gemara left room for us to add more. The Gemara asks about standing before a Sefer Torah. So now we have a question. We're talking about rising before Torah scholars. Now we're asking, do you have to rise before a Sefer Torah?
Always.
So let's see.
Dark open,
Right, so we know it for obvious, but it looks like the Gemara had a question. Let's try to understand what their question was. They asked, what is the law with regard to standing before a Torah scroll? Is one obligated to stand before a Torah scroll that is being carried?
I was waiting for you. There has to be some motion about it.
Yeah, so again, this relates to what we mentions in footnote 11. This question assumes the Gemara's previous conclusion that something carried is considered to be moving.
But we stand as soon as the ark is opened.
So that might not be like a chiyuv.
Walking or carrying might not be the.
There's a lot of times that the ark is open. Let's say even on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Not always does everyone stand for every single one. That some people, if it's hard for them to stand up, they sit when the ark is open. But when the Torah is carried,
Well, it's clearly it's open in anticipation of carrying the Sefer Torah.
I remember we just.
No, as I said, but on a regular.
yeah.
And people do rise if they can. Same.
But it might not be a chiyuv. Here we're talking about the obligation.
I'm listening.
Yeah, the Gemara answers. Reb Chilkiah, Reb Simon, and Reb Elazar said that the answer to this question may be deduced by the following Kal v'chomer. Since one rises before those who study the Torah, how much more so one should rise before the Torah itself. So that's the Kal v'chomer, like you said before. But this is obviously not so pashut, not so simple, because the Gemara elsewhere says that if you stand up for a Torah, for sure you should stand up before a Talmud Chacham, someone who's a Torah scholar. It makes the Kal v'chomer the other way around. So really the question is, what's greater, a Torah scholar or the Torah itself? Because each one really needs the other one. What would the Torah be without Torah scholars, and what would a Torah scholar be without Torah? So who's really supposed to stand up for the other? So our Gemara says that the Torah is greater, because if we stand up for those who study Torah, how much more so we should stand up for the Torah itself. But in a different Gemara on Makkos, it says just the opposite, that the Gemara says people are foolish, that they only stand up for a Torah and not for a Sefer Torah. And so,
Torah, not for a Torah scholar.
yes. And so on the bottom there's a lot of different answers. Maybe we'll go to a different time. Back in the Gemara relates an incident. While Reb Eli and Reb Yaakov Bar Zavdi were sitting and studying Torah. We're on another page, 83. Reb Shimon Bar Abba passed by.
Is that Eli again? What was the last time? Abaye.
Aivu. Reb Shimon Bar Abba passed by, and they rose before him. Reb Shimon Bar Abba said to them, there are two reasons why you should not have risen before me. He says, firstly, you are sages, whereas I am only a chaver. A chaver is a lower status than a Talmud Chacham. He says, you are atun chakimi. You are considered a chacham. And I'm just a chaver. Furthermore, does the Torah stand before its students? What are they saying here? Since Rabbi Eli and Rabbi Yaakov were engaged in the study of a halachic matter, they are described as Torah. Rabbi Shimon Bar Abba, who was not studying at that time, described himself as a student. There cannot be an obligation upon the Torah to rise before its students. So he said that there's two reasons why you should not have stood. First of all, because I'm on a lower level than you. I'm only a chaver and you are a chacham. And also, at that moment, you were studying Torah. I was not. So it's like the Torah standing up for the students doesn't make sense.
Which brings me to my question I'd thought before, I forgot to ask, which is, What about a sage who does not stand, cannot stand? What honor is due him?
A sage that cannot stand.
Yeah, an older man who can't rise, a man in a wheelchair, a disabled person, but he's a Talmid Chacham. He's not standing.
Why would he need to stand? People need to stand for him.
Right, but you say he doesn't walk. So all these rules about.
Oh, you're saying because he's sitting, because
Yeah.
he's not moving. That's but again, if he's in a wheelchair, then he is moving. No, we decided that something that's carrying you makes the person on
so
it.
the only issue is if he's stationary.
If he's stationary, yeah.
But that means that a Torah scholar who can't rise would never get honored. He's always sitting.
That's what it would seem.
Unless he's being carried or wheelchair.
Yeah.
I guess he would move. He might be bedridden.
But it's an interesting question. Really, what difference does it make if he's sitting or standing? Why is there a chiyuv only if he's walking or moving?
That's the essence of the question. I
Yeah.
guess.
So we'll have to look more into that. Saying by Tumah, we said clearly because the Torah uses that word Maishavai, the place of sitting. But why over here it does make a difference if he's walking or not. Okay, so basically now we're discussing another question. If someone is learning Torah, does he have to stand up for a Talmid Chacham while he is studying Torah? According to this understanding, while you're studying Torah, you're like the Torah itself. So then you don't have to stand up. But this is not so simple. The Gemara notes, Rav Shimon bar Abba agrees with Rabbi Elazar. For Rabbi Elazar said, a Torah scholar is not allowed to stand before his teacher while he, the student, is studying Torah. So you're studying Torah now. What? But now, an Amira strongly disagrees with this ruling. Abaye cursed it. He's very disturbed with this ruling. He condemned all those who follow Rabbi Elazar's opinion on this matter. And here we have to try to figure out why was Abaye so upset about this ruling, that you're not allowed to stand up for your teacher while you're studying Torah. So we'll get back to that soon. The Gemara presents a dispute related to the mitzvah of rising before a sage. This relates to Moshe, which is born in this week's parsha. So it says like this: V'hibitu achrei Moshe Abaye ha'olah. The Torah states, they watched Moshe until he entered the tent. Rav Ami and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha disagreed about the meaning of this verse. So why was everyone watching Moshe until he went back to the tent? So this is talking about after the Chet HaEgel, after the golden calf, and Moshe placed his tent far. He would place it in a distance from where the camp of the Jewish people were, because they were like excommunicated. And it says that Moshe would put on a mask, and the whole thing, he would go back and forth, put on the mask, take off the mask. And it says that they would look after Moshe until he went into his tent, and that's it. So it says like this. There's an argument between Rav Ami and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. One interpreted as referring to a shameful behavior, which it was not a good thing that the Jewish people were looking after Moshe. Whereas the other interpreted as referring to a praiseworthy behavior. The words in the Gemara are yesh. One says lignai v'chad amar l'shevach. One says that it's a shameful behavior. The other one says that it's a good thing, praiseworthy. We find that by Noach, right? He says he was a tzaddik. Some people say it's a gnai. He was only a tzaddik in his generation. Some people say the opposite. If he would be in a different generation, how much more so? So the one that interprets the verse as referring to a shameful behavior understands it as it explained elsewhere, namely that the people would complain and grumble about Moshe behind his back. So they would talk about Moshe until he got back to his tent, as saying they would speak negatively about him. If we look at 16, it actually says what the people were talking about Moshe behind his back. Let's look at 16. The Gemara does not spell out what they said because it is shameful. We could learn a lot just from what the Gemara doesn't tell us also. The Gemara doesn't even say what they said, but it's recorded in Medrash Tanchuma. People would say, look how thick his thighs are, how fat his neck is. All his great wealth is taken from us. Moshe Rabbeinu, everything he's eating a lot, he has a lot, it's all coming from us. So that's the gnai, that's the negative way of looking at it. The one that interprets the verse as referring to praiseworthy behavior explains it as it understood by the following teaching. Chizkiah said, Reb Chanina, son of Reb Avo, told me in the name of Reb Avo, who said it in the name of Reb Avdimi of Haifa. There are 3 categories of Torah leaders in regard to the mitzvah of rising. There is a sage, Talmud Chacham, you have an Av Beis Din, there's a leader of a court, and a Nasi, spiritual leader of people. Each level is above the other one. So, if a sage passes by, one stands before him as soon as he comes within 4 amos. And once he has gone 4 amos away, one may sit. So it's close proximity, within 4 amos. B, if an Av Beis Din passes by, one stands before him as soon as he comes into sight. And once he has gone 4 amos away, one may sit. So it starts earlier, right when he comes into sight, even if it's more than 4 amos. But then you have C, if a Nasi passes by, one stands before him as soon as he comes into sight, and one may not sit until he is seated in his place. And the proof is from our pasuk, because it is stated in the verse cited above, referring to Moshe, who was a Nasi, that all the people would rise and stand and watch Moshe until he entered the tent. They stood in honor of Moshe until he entered his tent, which was his place. So we have the same pasuk to 2 extremes, either that they were saying something negative about Moshe behind his back when he got into his tent. The other one is saying that they honored Moshe so much that they were standing, waiting till he gets back and sits in his tent. Amazing, you have 2 opposite explanations from the same pasuk.
You have a whole group of people.
You have different people, some are like that.
We never filled in Abaye's reason.
Oh, okay. We'll get to that right now. So we have 2 things, Abaye. Another thing we have to address is if you could explain a pasuk in a positive way or a negative way, why would you interpret it in the negative? Yeah, we have 2 options to explain this pasuk. So why would you explain it lignai in a shameful way if we could explain it l'shevach in a praiseworthy way? So for that, we'll go to the back of the book where all the treasures are.
What's the number?
So the number is Taf Reish Zayin. You're right.
I don't know, is it right there? I mean, I turned the top of his base.
So we're going on Taf Reish Zayin.
Tough race iron,
Taf Reish Zayin.
tough race hour.
It's on the left
Zion
side.
7, tough race Gimel,
It's on the left side.
race 8. Tough race Yud.
So Taf Reish Zayin.
Yeah.
We're looking at the far left where it says Likutin.
Okay.
So
Anytime we day.
yeah,
Oh, here.
Likutin.
Son of Chacham?
Ein Talmud Chacham. So the rule that we mentioned was that Ein Talmud Chacham Rashay Lamed Lifnei Rabbi, that a Torah scholar is not allowed to stand before his teacher B'shah Sha'isik B'Torah while he is studying Torah. And then we said Layit Ala Abaye, and Abaye cursed this people who follow this ruling. So why was Abaye so upset about this, that you're not allowed to? Abaye obviously holds that you are allowed to stand before your teacher when you're studying Torah. Why is he so upset at someone who holds that you're not allowed to? So this commentary brings something very interesting from Abaye's life. And a lot of times by understanding of where they're coming from, their background, we can understand what they said. Hada Abaye layit, why did Abaye curse and condemn those who follow the ruling that you're not allowed to stand for a teacher while you're learning Torah? Yitachen, it's possible, Darmina Memsachta Rosh Hashanah. It says in Rosh Hashanah, Abaye de asuk b'Torah v'gemilas chasadim chaye shitin shnin. So this needs a little bit of a background. It says that Abaye and Rabbah were both descendants of Eli.
Descendants of
Eli HaKohen. In the time of Shmuel, the Kohen Gadol was Eli. And there was a whole story over there that I think Eli's descendants got cursed that they should not live long. And both Abaye and Rabbah were descendants of Eli. And the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah tells us that Rabbah lived only for 40 years. That's because he only studied Torah but was not involved as much with kindness, with milos chasadim. But Abaye, because he was also involved in addition to his Torah study with kindness, he lived 60 years. That's what we know about Abaye. So it says, Abaye de asuk b'Torah ub'gemilas chasadim. Abaye, because he was involved in Torah and kindness, chai shitin shnin. He lived 60 years. What do we see from this? Hari Abaye hishtad lasuk b'gemilas chasadim lahar chayav. In order for Abaye's life to have a long life, a longer life, that's why he was involved in kindness. Lachein ratza lamed b'shah she'isek b'Torah she'yeh b'zeh Torah gemilas chasadim v'yachad. So Abaye it was very important to him to show kindness and show respect to someone else while studying Torah, because that's what gave Abaye a longer life. So someone who says you're not allowed to stand up, he gets really upset at him. He says, you're taking away my life. I'm only living longer because of kindness, because of Torah and Gemilas Chasadim. V'kol shekain bazeh shagayim arichas yamin. And we just previously learned in Gemara that standing up before a Talmud Chacham actually brings longevity, because we said that someone who does not rise before a Talmud Chacham einay marich yamin. So from the negative you could assume the positive, that rising before a Talmud Chacham adds to arichas yamin. So Abaye says, don't take away my long life. I'm trying to live longer. Don't tell me I'm not allowed to stand. That's why he was so upset. This is an interesting understanding of why Abaye cursed and was so upset at this ruling, because he felt that this would be taking away from his arichas yamin. Now the other question we asked was, why would someone interpret that pasuk lignai in a negative way about Moshe if we could explain it in a positive way? So let's read the next part. It's one after another. V'yibitu achri Moshe chad amar lignai v'chad amar l'shevach. One says for negative, one says for the positive. Yesh lahayir. There is to note. Achri di yesh lidrosh l'shevach. If you could interpret it for praise, who's forcing him to explain it in the negative way? From what the people were speaking behind Moshe's back, you see who Moshe was dealing with. So that's actually a praise for Moshe. That Moshe did not care what people spoke behind his back, and Moshe gave his life for those same people that were speaking always negatively about him. So we're actually bringing out something praiseworthy about Moshe, even though it's bringing out something negative about the Jewish people, what they were speaking about him. It shows how great of a leader he was, that he dealt with such people, people that were always talking behind his back. So tonight, as it's the Rambam's yahrzeit, so we'll go into the Rambam's take on this whole mitzvah. It's very interesting.
We done with the next section?
Yeah. I have to go to look. So the whole discussion that we're talking about is all based on this pasuk, Mipnei Seva Takum, that you should, in the presence of an elderly, you shall rise. V'adarta Pnei Zaken, you shall respect an elder. V'yareisa mi'alekecha ani Hashem. It says you should fear God, I am Hashem. So that's the pasuk that everything is based on. So when you read the pasuk literally, what would you think the mitzvah is, the basic mitzvah? It's honoring elders. That's the simple understanding, right? Now let's see what the Rambam thinks what this mitzvah means. Because the Rambam wrote many books. We have the Sefer HaMitzvahs, which is a book collecting all the different mitzvahs. Then you have Mishnah Torah, which is the book of halacha going into the details of all the mitzvah. And then you have Meir Nevuchim, the guide for the perplexed. And the Rambam has a certain definition for the Rambam has definitions for what each mitzvah is. Not everyone agrees with the Rambam about the count of the mitzvahs. The Rambam counts 613 in one way, but others could count certain things which the Rambam does not count as a mitzvah. They will consider it a mitzvah, or the other way around. So what is a mitzvah and what is included in the mitzvah could be very different. So let's see what the Rambam says about this mitzvah. Tonight's his yahrzeit, so we'll focus on the Rambam's take on this mitzvah. So this is in Hilchos Talmud Torah. Another important thing is that the Rambam, everything falls in a very specific category, which means you could learn a lot from where the Rambam is speaking about a certain mitzvah. So you have 613 mitzvahs, but where do you place the specific mitzvah? Based on the context, you could get a better understanding of what that mitzvah is. So we'll see, for example, over here. This mitzvah of honoring Bnei Seva Takum, where would you think that mitzvah falls into which category? The Rambam actually brings it in the laws of Talmud Torah, Hilchos Talmud Torah. He says like this, in Halacha Aleph, Kol Talmud Chacham mitzvah lahadrei. There's a mitzvah to honor and respect a Talmud Chacham. Va'af al pi she'eino rabba, even though he is not your teacher. Shenemar mipnei seva takum, and he brings this pasuk, v'hadarta pnei zaken, and you should rise before an elder. And he says, what is a zaken? Zaken zeh shekana chachma. The word zaken could also mean this is the person that acquired wisdom. Zeh shekana chachma. Zaken zeh shekana chachma.
It's almost an acronym.
Yeah, it's almost like a Rashi Tevis. Umi'emasai chayav v'named mipanav. And when do we have to stand up for this person? Mishiyikariv mimenu ba'arba amos. When he gets within your 4 amos, ad sheyaver mekeneged panav, until he goes away from you. So what do we see from here? That the Rambam right away starts off that this mitzvah is about Talmud Chacham. He doesn't mention elders yet, which is interesting that right away he says that the mitzvah is referring to a Talmud Chacham. Then, not at 8 halachas later in halacha tes, he says like this: Misha hu zakin muflag, someone who is of old age, muflag v'zikna, afal pi she'enei chacham, even if he is not wise.
What does muflag mean?
Muflag means like a lot or very, even though he's not. So he's very old, even though he's not a chacham. Aimdin lefanav, we stand before him. Va'afilu hachacham shehu yeled aimed b'fnei hazaken hamuflag b'zikna. Even someone who's young and very wise stands before someone who is older or very old. It's interesting where the Rambam got this definition that it's hamuflag b'zikna, specifically if someone is very old. Ve'enoi chayav lamed maloi kaimasai. He says that you don't have to stand and raise your whole posture. You could raise a little bit. Ela kadei lahadre, just to give him respect. Then he continues, Afilu zakin kusi Mahadir noisei b'dvarim, even someone, a non-Jewish elder, you respect him b'dvarim with words, v'noisnim lo yad l'samcha, you give him a hand to support him, shenamar mipnei seva tokum kol seva b'mashma. It's implied any elder, which implies even non-Jewish people that are old, you should also show them respect. And so, also if you look, the Rambam is very precise in his wording, and for the Talmud Chacham, the word that he uses is mitzvah lahadroi. That's the word he uses, lahadroi. The word hadar, we find it actually by a esroi, like creates hadar, a beautiful fruit. It means like to beautify, to glorify, to honor. And by the zakein, he uses the word oimdin lafanav. We stand before him. It's a different word. So we see here already something interesting, that the Rambam is putting it in two separate halachas. He does not combine them. He doesn't say that the mitzvah is the mitzvah of Bnei Seva Takum is to stand before a Talmud Chacham and an elder. He says the mitzvah of Bnei Seva Takum is to honor a Talmud Chacham. And then he says later, and we stand before the elders. He puts it in like a separate halacha. So we have to try to understand why is the Rambam doing this? Why is he making the separation between the honor of a Talmud Chacham and the honor of the elder? Which one is the Torah talking about? That's really the question. When the Torah uses the words Mipnei Seva Takum, is that talking about a Torah scholar or is it talking about an older person? And then in Halacha Yud Aleph, the Rambam goes in to show how important it is to honor a Torah scholar, and the opposite for those who disrespect the Talmud Chacham. He says like this: Avain gadol hu, it is a great sin levazos ez chachamim, to disrespect the Torah scholars, or to hate them. Leicharva Yerushalayim ad shebazu ba talmidei chachamim. He says one of the reasons why Yerushalayim was destroyed was because they disrespected Torah scholars. Shenamar vayihiyu mal'ivim b'malachei elikim. They were despising the angels of Hashem. Uboizim dvarav. They disrespected the words. Umesatim v'neviyav. They were playing or making fun of their prophets. Kalaymar, the Rambam says this means boizim melamdei dvarav. They are disrespecting those who teach the words of Torah. What the Torah writes, that you might come to despise the statutes, the Torah laws. It's talking about those who teach the law. Someone who disrespects a Torah scholar does not have a portion in the world to come. This is included in disrespecting the word of Hashem. So the Rambam goes very strong over here about how important it is to respect, and the opposite, the results of what happened, the destruction of Yerushalayim and other things as a result of disrespecting a Talmud Chacham. So this is in the Mishnah Torah from the Rambam. And then we have the Sefer HaMitzvahs, where he goes through all the 613 mitzvahs. So when it comes to this specific mitzvah, what does the Rambam say? That this mitzvah, it's mitzvah number 209, Reish Tes, Hi shetzivanu lechabed hachachamim v'loko mipneim l'gadol oisam. What?
You push them together.
Puts what together?
Never mind.
So here he actually singles it out. He doesn't even speak about the elders. The Rambam says that the mitzvah is to honor chachamim. V'hu amrei yis'ala mipnei seva takum v'darta pnei zaken. So it's very interesting. We see from here, and here it becomes very clear the Rambam's opinion. He holds that the pasuk is mainly talking about a Talmud Chacham, even though literally if you just translate the pasuk, it seems like it's talking about respecting elders. The Rambam doesn't even mention it in this mitzvah. He says that this pasuk is talking about honoring Talmidei Chacham.
That's what he says.
You're right. That's why I write it.
Into a different word.
Yeah, so that's what he means in Mishnah Torah, right? V'loshen sifra takum v'hadarta kima sheyesh b'hidur ukvar hisparu mishpati mitzvah b'perakrishin mikidushin. He says this, it's explained in Kiddushin what we're learning over here. Vida, you should know, she'im hayos mitzvah zeh mechayeves lanashim kulam b'chlal, even though this mitzvah applies to everyone, koloimer l'chabed ha'chachamim v'afilu l'chacham sheshov alei b'chachma. So this is interesting. Does one Talmud Chacham need to show respect or to stand up for another Talmud Chacham? The answer is yes over here. K'maisha amru ba'amram, it says in Bava Metzia, Talmidei Chachamim shebebavel aimdim zeh mipnei zeh. It says that the Talmidei Chachamim would stand up before each other, even though they're both the Talmud Chacham. Da sheyesh bekavod dvarim naisafim ala Talmud. For a student, he has to show even more respect than one Talmud Chacham to another. V'zeh ki kavod the Talmud l'Rabbi yesh bei tosefes gedola al hakavod shu mechuyev l'chacham. A student to a teacher has to give much more respect than one Talmud Chacham to another. The Yischayev loy im hakavod hamayra. Together with respect, there also comes fear or reverence. Ki heim kvar biaru shechaik rabbi alav k'chaik aviv. Here it's comparing a teacher to a father. Shechiva yakasav l'chabdei l'yarem imenis. This kind of puts together everything we're learning about. Really, if we think about it, the last few weeks we're discussing about honoring parents, honoring a teacher, and it's honoring Hashem. And here we're saying that honoring a teacher is in a way like honoring your parents, which honoring your parents is like honoring of Hashem.
What about a situation where a son is a greater sage than his father?
Where a son is a greater sage than his father. I think the halacha is that the father does not need to stand for his son.
And does the son still need to stand for the father?
I think he still does. The Rambam writes it clearly, but okay. So here we see just again to clarify the Rambam's view that he holds that the mitzvah of Mipnei Seva Takum is mainly talking about a Talmud Chacham. But now we'll go into the Meir Nevuchim. So the Meir Nevuchim is trying to give reason and explanation for mitzvahs.
Is that a different book of his?
Yep. So this is another book of the Rambam, and here he's going to explain what's yes, Meir Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed. So here again, the Rambam is putting in a certain category a bunch of mitzvahs, and he says like this: HaMitzvahs asher kalalos hamaklal harishon. So the mitzvah in category number 1, the Rambam has like 13 or 14 categories of mitzvahs, which means if you had to take all 613 mitzvahs and put them into categories, he put them into 14 categories pretty much. And the first category are called deos. Deos is having the right knowledge, the right perspective. Asher safarnum behilchos yisaidei HaTorah. And I've listed those in the laws of Yisodei HaTorah, the foundations of the Torah. Sibas kulam mevueres. The reason of all these mitzvahs that fall under this category is the same idea. Histakel bahem, look closely at them. Achas achas, look at them one by one. Timtza amiti sada sahu. You'll find the truth of the knowledge of this idea. Vishehu inyan maifsi. And it's just like so evident. It's so clear that this is the purpose of these mitzvahs. So there's a lot of mitzvahs that go under this category of deos, of knowledge, of having the right knowledge. So for example, avodah zarah is having the wrong knowledge, having the wrong belief. So having the right deya would be not serving avodah zarah. That's just an example of what would fall into deos. V'chein kol ma sheba min hazirus, whatever would come to encourage you, v'azhara lilmeid ulalamed, and kind of warn you or encourage you to learn or study, muvur hatei. It's understood what the purpose is. This is a key word that the Rambam uses a lot in Meir Nevuchim, is te'elis. What is the purpose? lot of times you look at a mitzvah and you're wondering, what's the purpose of this mitzvah? What do we gain through this mitzvah? So he says the purpose is understood, self-understood. Ki im lo tiya sham chachma, if there's no knowledge, if there's no wisdom, lo yiyah sham ma'aseh tov v'lo das amiti. You will not have any good actions if you don't have the right knowledge. Everything starts from having the right idea. And here he goes to our mitzvah, where he explains the purpose of honoring Torah scholars. The kibud chachmei Torah gam kein mevur atayeles. He says honoring Torah scholars is self-understood why we need to do this. She'im lo yiyu gedolim be'enei bnei adam u'mechubadim, if they will not be respected in people's eyes, lo yishmu el devreim, no one's going to listen to what they say. B'ma she'yeshiru elav min hadeos v'hamaisim, from what they were trying to get people to have the right knowledge and the right actions. So the Rambam is saying a simple thing. What's the purpose of this mitzvah? It's all about deis. If you want that there should be respect for Torah, there has to be respect for those that are for the scholars. That's what he's saying. Now
and disrespecting the elderly per se doesn't advance that.
Exactly. But now he does mention Ubechlal, something very interesting, the last line here on the page. Ubechlal zaysa mitzvah gamkin. What else is included in this mitzvah? Lehisnahig bebaishes uba'anava. Included in this mitzvah is to act in a humble way and bashful way. That's something that we learn from this mitzvah. Ritzaynei leimer amru mipnei sevatakum. And that's really what the mitzvah is telling us, to be humble. Showing respect to other people means that you yourself need to be humble and show them respect. So here we have 3 different books of the Rambam, and it really brings to us a full picture of what he holds. The Rambam is very into showing how important it is to respect Torah scholars, because he sees in that respect for Torah itself. And that's how he understands the pasuk of Mipnei Sevatakum. Now here there's an interesting story from the Medrash on the next page here. So we have a story from the Medrash. Amar of Abba Hakayin Bar Papa. Keshahayisi raya siya acha shel bnei adam. When I would see a group of people, hayisi mahalach b'derech acheres, I would walk a different way. Sheloi lahatriach aleim, not to bother them, because he was an elder and he was a Talmud Chacham, or maybe one of them, and he didn't want to bother people to stand up for him. They should not see me and therefore have to stand up for me. So I share this conduct, what I do, with Rabbi Yossi Bar Zvida. He says, you should specifically walk by people. They should see you and stand before you. This will bring these people to fear Hashem. This is another understanding of the pasuk. By standing up before an elder or a Talmud Chacham, that will bring you to Yeresa, that will bring you to fear Hashem. So he was encouraging this Talmud Chacham or elder person to walk in front of other people, to give them the opportunity to rise before him. This way they'll fear Hashem more.
Not to mention that the busha could be seen as maybe he's ashamed of his Torah. That, other people have more important things to do than my Torah study.
So busha could mean that you realize that someone else might know more than you. Yeah, that's.
I'm saying the opposite. No? This man's a bricklayer. Look, he's building buildings. This is important. I'm a Torah scholar. Maybe I think that his bricklaying is more important than my Torah study. We certainly have that problem in modern day. People don't think highly of Torah scholarship as it's a big problem in Israel. They don't think Torah scholarship is a reasonable thing for people to do. Why aren't they working for a living, et cetera, et cetera. So that could definitely fall into this.
But the person rising, he is showing busha.
Yeah,
right.
But the person avoiding other people.
Yeah.
That could imply embarrassment.
Embarrassment to the Torah. Yeah. Just interesting, the word busha, it says the Jewish people have three qualities. They're baishanim, they're bashful, rachmanim, merciful, and goyim lechasadim, and kind. Now, the Yerushalmi says something very interesting over here.
We're cursed for those things, by the way, too.
What?
Throughout history, we've been cursed for being kind.
What about for being bashful?
There's a lot of glorification of pride you see in the world. Yeah. And, some people don't think much of humility.
Right. So this mitzvah is really teaching us humility. That's what the Rambam is saying. That the idea of having busha v'anava is what the Torah is teaching us. Mipnei seva takum. Now, the Yerushalmi is going to tell us something amazing here. Remeir Chami, afilu sav am haaretz. Here we see Remeir when he would see even an older person that was am haaretz and not learned, u'meikim leimin kamoi, and he would stand before him. Amar loy magain marich yamim. He says he does not live long for nothing. The fact that he's alive for a long time means that he did something to deserve it. Amar Rab Simon. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mipnei seva takum v'adarta pnei zakin v'yereso me'elekacha. This is the same pasuk, and it says Ani Hashem. Why does it say I am your Hashem? Ani hu shekiyamti amida zakin tchila. I am the first who stood before an elder. Hashem is saying this. I stood before an elder. Who is this talking about? When did Hashem rise before a zakin? When did Hashem perform this mitzvah of the Pnei Seva Takum? When did Hashem stand before an elder?
When he walked by Moshe? When Moshe was allowed to see his back?
It's an interesting idea. Is Hashem standing up there? Where do you see that?
Moshe hid the cleft in the rock and Hashem walked by.
So Hashem is walking by Moshe, but where do you see standing up?
You got me.
I also couldn't figure this out, but it's actually talking about Avram Avinu. When Avram was sick, it says Hashem stood, and while Avram was sitting over there.
Oh, you mean that was Malachim? You're saying Hashem, of course, Baruch Hu per se?
No, so it says Vayera Elav Hashem. Hashem appeared to him. Hashem was talking to him, and Avram was sitting. Avram was sitting there, and Hashem came before him. So the pasuk is saying, "V'yereso me'elekacha ani Hashem." I did this. I honored a zaken, so therefore you should honor as well. But this just leaves us with a question. Avram was sitting, right? According to our Gemara, if a person is sitting, you don't have to stand before him. So this raises a question on our whole what we learned today. Maybe someone could find an answer. We'll leave it for next.
Too sick to stand up.
What?
Was he too sick to stand up?
Who, Avram? Probably that's why he was sitting. It was right after his bris, right?
Yeah.
But here it's saying that he was, because he was a zaken, that's why Hashem stood before him. That's why he's saying, Ani Hashem, I did it, so you should do it too. So anyway, it's a lot to learn from this mitzvah.
Baruch Hu has no age, and yet he considered
Avram
a zaken.
It actually says Avram zaken. It says that Avram is zaken. Hashem is always young.
There you go.
Hashem is always young, right? Because Hashem
always in the moment.
Hashem doesn't age. Hashem is always was, and will be.
Okay, so.
All right, should we do one last thing, or should we
We
give
got 1 more minute.
1 more minute? Okay, so this just ties back to what we learned in the beginning. How many times is a Talmud Chacham allowed to stand? So we said only twice a day, right? Because if you do more, then it sounds like you're honoring the Torah scholar more than Hashem. So if you look in the Rambam adds one word over here. He says, Talmud shu yeshiv lefnei rabbi tamid einay rashay lamnipanav l'shachris v'arvis bilvad. He says a student who is always sitting in front of his teacher, then he is not allowed to stand up more than Shachris and Arvis.
Shachris and Arvis, not Shachris and Mincha?
Yes, that we discussed that before. So why Shachris and
I thought we said Shabbos and Mincha, and Arvis was the voluntary.
What was the wording in our Gemara that it say Shachris?
It said twice a day.
I think it was
Okay.
Marav was optional.
Meyer was optional. That's what we said.
So that implies that the Kiyuv was for Shabbos and Mincha.
The words in our Gemara was also Shachris v'Arvis. So, but Arvis, I guess Arvis could mean evening. That's one interpretation, or that it's referring to Shema.
No, because Mincha could be, you know,
All right, so
especially
Shema.
on a long summer day, it's a pretty broad.
Yeah, but he mentioned Shema and Shema. So the Shema or Shabbos and
Smile
Shema.
ties it to the.
Right. Okay, so I forgot about that. That sounds fine.
So one of the commentaries say something interesting, that there's certain Torah scholars that are called Teirasan Umnasan, someone that their Torah is their full occupation, that they never stop, they're just always studying Torah. So they do not have to stop for davening. If someone is learning Torah full time all the time, which is not common but possible, they only have to stop for Kriya Shema. So that's what the Rambam is saying over here, that someone who's learning Torah all the time and they only stop twice a day for Shachris and Arvis, which would mean Kriya Shema of the morning and Kriya Shema of the night, so then they could only stand up for their teacher twice, just like they do for Kriya Shema.
Maybe that's why I keep seeing people sitting and ignoring the davening.
Because we must assume that they're learning Torah all the time. Learning time.
Of course it
Yeah. That's the saying. So that would explain the wording of Shachris v'Arvis, because we're talking about Kriya Shema. We're talking about Shema, and Shema is in the morning and the night. So they get up to do, because they're learning Torah all the time, they get up only for those two things, for Shachris and Arvis. So then they are only allowed to rise before their teacher only those two times. Okay, so yeah, we don't go too much longer. That was what it says outside about the Kriya Shema.
Shukayah.
Yeah, Shukayah. Shukayah.